In this tutorial, we are going to cover ACM global actions and global linkages. Let's cover some important notes before we start. Global actions and global linkages are executed at the appliance level. Connection to the field hardware controller is required for the actions to work properly. If communication between the appliance and the field hardware controllers is lost, global actions and global linkages will not execute. It is important to first define all actions that will be executed in the system and then create a global action and global linkage as you require. Let's take a look at some of the prerequisites. Latest ACM version installed is recommended, although this function will work in almost any of legacy versions of ACM. Use an admin account to perform this task. If you have a particular account, make sure that that account has an SP admin level of permission. ACM Enterprise standard license will include global actions and global linkages. So let's take a look a little bit at what the difference between global actions, global linkages, macros, and triggers. So what is the difference? So global actions and linkages reside in the appliance and can be utilized to execute actions throughout the entire system. So for example, you press a panic button or you present a particular credential or any type of input, and you could potentially disable all the doors in the entire system throughout all the field hardware controllers. If the appliance loses communication with the field controllers, then the actions will not take effect. They will not get executed. So that's one of the issues that you have utilizing global actions and global linkages. Very flexible. You have a reach out to the entire system, but you cannot lose communication with the hardware controllers, otherwise those actions will not execute. On the other hand, you have macros and triggers, which reside in each individual controller, field hardware controller. They can be executed actions within that controller only. So the actions will not propagate, will not replicate to other controllers. They are executed only at that local level. The advantages that you have with that is that even if you lose communication with the appliance, those field controllers will execute the macro and trigger that are defined at their controller. But again, only at that hardware field controller alone. So if you need to execute, for example, a global lockdown, you cannot use macros and triggers. It will be very difficult for you to program the system where from one controller you could execute an entire lockdown. So for those, you have to use global action. For procedures or for instances where you need a specific set of actions that could be executed at the local level, you could use macros and triggers. So let's take a look in one scenario, and then we'll go to ACM and do the programming. So we want to do a lockdown when a particular credential, let's call that the red card, is presented to a particular reader. So imagine a school principal has in his pocket this red credential, this red badge, and when he presents that badge to either a particular reader, in this case here in this example, or it could be in any of the readers, you present that and all the doors will lock automatically. So to create that, here's the actions that we're going to perform in the video. So we're going to create, first of all, the actions to lock all doors, and then to restore all doors. So notice that when you're creating a global action, it is advisable that you always create that in pairs. So there is one action to execute something, and then there is the reverse of that action. Or think about is one action is on, the other action is off, or one action is enabled and the other action is disabled. So you always execute that in pairs. So it's a good practice if when you're creating that, make sure that you do that in pairs. So create the action to execute something, and then the opposite of that to bring the system to normal, or in this case, to restore all doors. Once that is completed, then we're going to go and create a global linkage to lock all doors based on a particular credential. And then we'll create another global linkage to restore all doors using that same credential when presented to a particular reader. So let's go ahead and switch to ACM, to software, and let's start the programming. Okay, now that we're logged in ACM, I'm using a administrator account. I'm gonna go ahead and this is assuming that you already have identities created, you have your access groups, you have credentials added to the system or tokens, and I'm simply going to program a global action and global linkage to lock all the doors with a particular credential. So when I present this credential, it's going to lock all doors. So let's go ahead and go here in physical access, global actions. So my first step is to create the actions that will be utilized to lock all doors and restore all doors. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit that global action button. This I'm gonna call lock all doors. So make sure that when you're naming those global actions that you name something meaningful that will let you know exactly what it does when you see the description. And so notice that there is a whole bunch of different type of actions that we can perform in here. I'm going to, at this video, just stay here with the door mode. But for example, we could do email notifications. So part of your actions when you do a lockdown, you want to have an email notification. So you could create a action to email something, and now you would enter the email address. Input points, output points. If I want to trigger any output points to fire a siren, a buzzer, whatever that is, I can do that. And there's a whole bunch of other different actions that you can take. So let's go ahead and do door mode, because what I want to do is lock all doors. So I'm going to go ahead and here and subtype, select lock, and now I'm going to go and choose all the readers. So basically I'm just going to hit the first one, hold shift in my keyboard, hit the last one, and then just click the arrow, move them up. Okay, hit save. Now that action is created. So I'm gonna go ahead now and create the action to restore all doors. So same principle, another global action, and this is gonna be called restore all doors. I'm gonna go ahead and pick once again door mode. And now in this case, by default, it's already selected restore. Perfect, that's what I'm gonna keep. And I'm gonna go here and choose that option. Click, move them, move the readers to members, and I can go hit save. Okay, for global actions, that's it. We created 2 global actions. Now keep in mind, as I said before, if I want to go ahead and create an email, I want to create a notification for this action. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. So you see that as an example too. So this will be email notification. So let's go ahead and select email here. And then I'm just going to go and type the email address. So let's go ahead and just use that as an example, right? So you would select here your email address. If you're trying to send that message out to maybe your phone to get a text message, find out what is the email address of your text message. Usually it is your phone number at whatever is your cell phone carrier, right? Website, and that would alert you. That will give you notification alert directly in your text message, SMS in your mobile phone. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And this is just another action, right? So I can go ahead and create many more actions and say maybe I want to trigger this output which turns on this buzzer or do any other type of actions. All you have to do is just hit this global action, go select the type of action you want to create, and that's it. Now let's take a quick look here what we have. So I have a lockdown, lock all doors, a restore, and also an email notification. Notice that right here I have an option to execute. So I can actually execute those actions manually right here. If I just hit this item here, it's going to lock all doors. So just to give an example how this would work, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and right click here and open the doors in a different tab so we can come back to this one and continue our programming, right? So I can go here. Notice that all my doors right now are in card only or pin, so they're in this mode. I'm going to go ahead and test my global actions, right? So be careful if you're doing this in a live system. You don't want to do this during business hours, or otherwise it will lock everybody out of the system. So I'm going to go ahead and execute. You're going to get a message on screen saying that that action was executed. If I go now into my readers, notice it says locked, no access, right? So all the doors now are locked, okay? I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to go ahead and hit the restore button. And when I hit restore, get the same message again saying that was executed. Go back here, and now the cards are all back to its normal condition, okay? So let's take a look now. So here's the other option, also schedule. I could have it scheduled to say fire this, lock all doors in a particular time that I want to have the doors locked, no access. So you could do that. Same goes for restore all doors, right? So you have that option in here. For what we're going to do right now, this is all I need here for global actions. Now we're going to go and jump to global linkages. So here's where the magic is going to happen. This is where we're going to tell the system, when this situation happened, I want you to go and execute the following actions. And then you select the actions. So let's take a look. So go to global linkages. I'm going to go ahead and create a new global linkage. And I'm going to call this lock all doors with red credential. So just a meaningful name that I know what this is going to do, right? So schedule when this is supposed to run. So you want this just to run maybe just in business hours, right? So you can create your schedules first and then come here and select. In this case, because it's an emergency procedure, I don't know when I'm going to need it, hopefully never, but I'll have that as 24 hours active, okay? So go ahead and hit save. And when you do that, now it brings a set of other items. So notice that down here it says device, events, tokens, and actions. It says none. So nothing of this is programmed, and you have the equivalent tabs up top. So what we're going to do now is work those tabs out. So we're going to go from device to events to tokens to actions, right? So first, I need to select the source. What is my source that's going to trigger the lockdown? So in this case, it's going to be a door. Could be an input point in panic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click in door. I'm going to call that the front door. It's just a sample door. It could be any name, right? So that's the door that I'm not going to use to trigger that. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And when you do that, now I'm going to go back to that screen, and I'll notice that under the device, I have the door selected. So now I'm going to go and select what type of event. And I want that to be a door grant event. So let's do a local grant. So I can go ahead and highlight it, hit L, and this will show me a local grant. So that means a valid credential, when presented to that reader, will execute the action. Not any valid credential, or not any valid credential, is a particular one. So that's where I'm now going to go to tokens and select the credential that I want. In this case, I'm holding a credential in my hand that has a number 1003. I'm going to go ahead and search for that. And here's my credential. It could be one credential, could move multiple credentials, could be multiple people, right? So you could search for people and add those credentials in here so you can build a list. And only those credentials that are in this list will be able to execute that action. Okay, so save that. We're almost there. So now notice that I have a front door, a local grant for this particular card. Now I'm going to go ahead and execute the action. So the action here is a lockdown. So I'm going to go ahead and select lockdown, move to members. I could do email notification, right? So I can go ahead and move email notification here. And what this would do is lock all doors and send an email notification out, which could be to my first responders team, to the assigned police officers in my area, whatever that is, right? So you can go ahead and do that. Hit save. And my first action is done. My first global linkage is completed. So let's read this. Let's take a look and see how this reads out. So front door, if I present this particular badge number, credential number, into this door, right? At this door right here, and I grant a local grant, this action will be executed. In this case, those two actions. That's how this reads out. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit global linkages again and create the reverse of that. And pay attention because the reverse is a little tricky. So I'm going to show you how this works. So now this is restore all doors. Okay, same thing, 24 hours. I'm going to go ahead now and same ordeal. I'm going to go and select the reader. In this case, it will be the same reader, the same door, my front door. Hit save. Then I'm going to go to event. So this is where the trick is. So if I want this one credential to basically do a toggle effect, right? So I present the card once to the reader, my red card, right? I present that to the reader, will lock all doors. I present it again, restore all doors. To do that, the trick is this. When the doors are in lock state, if you present a regular credential to a door that is in a lock state, you're going to get this message, attempt to open a locked door. So I'm going to select that because now I'm assuming the doors are locked, and when I present this card again, I'm not looking for a local grant. I'm looking for an attempt to open an unlocked door. And when I get that, then I have to tell the system with which card and then what is the action that I want to execute. So I'm going to go to tokens again. I'm going to go ahead and type the same credential number. Very important, right? Make sure that you use the same credential, because otherwise now you're executing that in two credentials. You could too, right? You could have maybe two cards. One is my red card that lock the system, and then I have another card and maybe in a separate area where is the green card that restore the system to normal. It could be done that way too. In this case, I just want one card to do both sides. So lock and restore all doors. So here is the same credential. I'm going to click save. And now for the last part, I'm going to go ahead and use enter the action that I want to execute. And in this case, the action will be restore all doors. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Okay, let's read this out. So if I present this credential number here to this door and I get an attempt to open locked door, execute this action. That's how this reads out. Okay, so I have the reader right here, ready to go. So let's go ahead and switch to the doors. You see the doors are in this state. I'm going to go ahead and present the card. And now all the doors are locked. And notice that was very quickly, right? So this function works very well. Again, as long as you don't lose communication between the server and the field hardware controllers, the appliance and the controllers, this will execute very fast. And I'm going to present it again. And now the doors will go back to normal state. Here it is. So now the doors are normal. Okay, that's it. That's how simple it is to create a global action and a global linkage.